All right, ladies and gentlemen, MrSotko here. Welcome back to the channel. Got a whole bunch of good news stuff for you today. But the main topic is Bitcoin price to reach 60,000 in 2018. Probably not, though. So, cryptocurrency expert remains resolute in his January prediction. And wow, that's not entirely surprising that somebody would stick to their guns about their price predictions. That's never happened before. Cryptocurrency and initial coin offering expert Philip Nunn made a prediction in January that Bitcoin would reach lows of 6,000. I suppose he was right on that one, but honestly, that was particularly hard to call, considering the price was collapsing pretty hard around January, and it always does. And it got to about that in let's see where it got to 6,000. About April or so it got there. So, he called that one congratulations, but saying it'll reach highs of 60,000. Nunn recently reiterated his confidence in the prediction after it plummeted almost 18% last week. So, I'm almost a little tired of these cryptocurrency experts and their price predictions, whether it be John McAfee's $500,000 or whatever it is from day to day, and saying $60,000 with really no basis behind it. It's just a guess. So the CEO of the Blackmore Group said that in the year 2018, it would reach a bottom of 6,000 and a high of 60,000. So again, plus 1 point for the 6,000, and we'll have to see about that $60,000. So Nunn remains confident, however, citing his unwavering belief in the underlying blockchain technology as the vehicle that will take Bitcoin and others to new highs in the coming years. The problem is that, Bitcoin, once it goes up way, way high in value, people start to use it. And that's really good. You might be like, hey, why is that a bad thing? Well, because the problem is that Bitcoin can only do about 7 transactions per second. So when half the planet is using Bitcoin, when it goes super high in price, the blocks get super full and the fees get super, super high. So that's a major problem, and there is some work being done with Bitcoin Lightning Network and such, and even when December came along, SegWit hadn't really rolled out on every single exchange or anything like that. So fees are much lower, and I would expect if Bitcoin went to 20,000 again and everybody was using it again, that the fees would be a little bit lower and things would be just a little bit faster with Lightning Network. But even still, it doesn't really have the potential to support the whole world. Some cryptocurrencies do and some don't, and Bitcoin is one of them. So there's a lot of work to be done with Bitcoin. I think people realized that once it hit 20,000. There was a number of reasons why it went down in price once it hit 20,000. Namely, one of them was market manipulation and futures, but another part of it was the fact that people didn't want to pay $20 and $40 and $50 fees for sending $1,000 or something like that in Bitcoin around. It's just pretty outrageous compared to a lot of other currencies. So he says the cryptocurrency market is still relatively young and quite small compared to traditional markets, so cryptocurrency small market cap makes it easier to manipulate, which is true. However, constant waves of news concerning regulation, technology, and security make the cryptocurrency market truly unique, Nunn continues. All the money that exists in crypto at the moment is from the public, so not entirely, but sure. So it's all about market sentiment. A flood of bad news can wobble the market. Stuff like regulation. The industry is so small that there's market manipulation. So my prediction is 25,000 to 30,000 at best. Maybe 35,000. I know that's a pretty broad estimate. But again, that's just a prediction, and that's just what I think based on the all-time highs of 20,000 last year, or rather at the end of last year, and if it got to 20,000 again, I think there would be a nice bull market run. I think there would be a little bit of problems at 20,000. I think a lot of people would sell off and fear that it's going to sell off again. And it might dump down to like 18,000. But then when people realize that it's not going to dump any further, they're going to buy back in again and make it rise again. But 60,000, the idea of 60,000 is absurd. And here's the reason why I think there could be a bull run, sometime during Christmas, or rather close to it, November, December-ish, because the price last year, we were at about where we are now. And then as it got close to December, we could see these massive jumps from 10,000 to 17,000, and this was a matter of days. So from November 30th, we were looking at about 10,000, and then just December 7th, we were looking at 16,000. We dumped to 13,000, and again, in just a matter of days, we went to 19,000. So this can really happen in the blink of an eye. And right now, looking at the long run and seeing how low Bitcoin is and how fairly stagnant it is, it's reasonable to think that some people might believe that it's not really going anywhere just yet. And I still have the comment that somebody sent me. I told him that I would screenshot it and that I would get back to that user because he basically flipped out, saying that basically calling me an idiot, thinking that I only think that Bitcoin is going to double or only be 25,000 by the end of the year. It was during one of my price prediction videos, and saying that you don't think that it's going to at least double. And no, I don't think that's going to be the case. The amount of money that it takes to get Bitcoin higher and higher and higher is more and more and more. So it doesn't just go from 20,000 to 40,000 that easy. It doesn't go from 40,000 to 80,000 that easy. There's a big difference between going from 1,000 to 20,000, and a huge difference between some people saying, it's going to be 100,000 by the end of the year, or 50,000. That's a much bigger jump than what we achieved earlier. So when people see, coins go from $1 to, $30, that's a totally different story, based on the circulating supply of the coin and yada, yada. And I just don't think it's going to get to 60,000. I think that's a little ridiculous and a little too high. But, then again, at the same time, I would be excited if it got to 60,000. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to convince the world not to pay 60,000 for Bitcoin. If it goes up there, great. So EOS has issues, and I've been talking about this pretty much every day because it is pretty big news, as it is the biggest ICO ever. It lasted an entire year, raised over $4 billion, and now we have... what do we even have? EOS, I guess. And every time I make a video talking about how much I kind of dislike EOS, and I'm disliking it more and more every day, there's always somebody in the comments that absolutely goes berserk, and just basically flips out. And I think that's for a number of reasons. I think whenever, somebody is holding a coin, I think it's really just based on psychology. So when somebody's holding a coin, they don't want anybody talking bad about it, regardless of the coin's issues. And it's really apparent with Bitcoin. I like Bitcoin a lot. Everybody likes Bitcoin, but you also have to admit that Bitcoin has major issues in that once actually people start using it, the 7 transactions per second is simply insufficient, and then it ends up raising the fees because the blocks are full and the transactions are backed up to like a 7-mile long train, and that's a huge problem. And so when everybody brings up that point, people get a little upset. And that's kind of the same thing with EOS right now, is that I think a lot of people are holding EOS and they don't want anybody talking bad about it. So it's a lot of things. They don't want people talking bad about it because they think it might be flooding the price, and the price might go down, and then their investment is worth less money, or they feel that it's a personal attack on their choice of coin that they decided to invest in. And that's not really the case from me. I'm just pointing out facts here, and a little bit of my own opinion, but it's not necessarily an attack on your opinion if I talk badly about a coin that you happen to be holding. That's not really my problem that you decided to buy into a coin that clearly has tons of issues just because it raised $4 billion and because everybody's saying it's going to go to the moon. That hasn't happened with any coin yet, and depending on what your definition of coin is. The problem with crypto nowadays is that people are sitting on them like stock, and they're not actually trading them. So it's like they're opening up a pack of baseball cards cards, and they're just like, oh, right, so this is going in my collection for the next 40 years. That's not how a currency works. That's not going to raise the price of the currency. You actually have to spend the currency. You can't just go out and buy a ton of VeChain, Omisigo, Golem, Stratus, whatever is flashing here at the top, and then sit on it in a wallet for the next 4 years. I guess if you could, and hope that it goes up in price, but if everybody does that, then it's not useful. A currency that would be like me putting away, a few hundred American dollars for the next 5 or 6 years. Sure, 5 or 6 years later, I'm going to pull out my money, but likely because nobody was ever spending it and inflation. I know it's kind of a different story. It's actually going to be worth less because of inflation. And with crypto, people are just sitting on their tokens and like they're commodities, like they're stock or something like that, and not actually using them, and that's not going to raise the price of crypto at all. So the EOS soap opera has made for compelling viewing in recent weeks. The level of hype and funds invested in the project made a soft launch was never going to be possible. Satoshi appears to have launched Bitcoin alone. I don't know about that. Maybe. With zero fanfare in the world oblivious. EOS, on the other hand, is launched following a year-long ICO of $4 billion, having excited half the crypto community and alarmed the other half. The most recent issue was a bug that caused block production to stop over the weekend, forcing a conference call between Block 1 EOS developers and the 21 block producers tasked with running the network, the 21 block producers that make $2.5 million a year just for being a node. You're like, hey, what else? That's pretty much it. Making some small decisions and being a node. $2.5 million a year. Did you vote? Probably not. Did you know who to vote for? Probably not. Where did these votes go? You don't know. EOS. Congratulations for investing. The cause of the problem appears to have been an error in the latest build, obliging EOS to resort to an earlier version of the code. This raises questions of how much testing is being performed on the new code. It looks like Block 1 is issuing updates that have not been thoroughly tested, forcing them to fix problems as they occur on the mainnet. $4 billion. Hate a repeat of the last episode, but again, $4 billion. And mind you, they have 10% of their own coins, 100 million of their own coins equals about $1.5 billion, $5.5 billion. And they're not even testing the code. This isn't a video game. This isn't a video game. This is real people's money. This is a real $4 billion project. And this isn't a video game where a publisher just releases a patch that supposedly fixes a game or balances a game and then ends up destroying it because they didn't bother to test it. That is frustrating when that happens, but that's a totally different story. Nobody lost out on a ton of money. It's a different story. You need to test your code much more thoroughly. If it's got to take months before you bring out a new update and test it, with some kind of other network or something like that, whatever you got to do. So here's a quote: "You should cut crypto asset some slack because it's still young. Even Bitcoin had bugs early on." And so he says that's not how adversarial environments work. Public networks should have robustness commensurate with their value, $4 billion. There's no handicap awarded for immaturity. So features, bugs, and anomalies. Well, unfortunate bugs are to be expected when an entirely new blockchain launches, and Bitcoin and Ethereum weren't without their issues in the early days either. But there are troublesome aspects of EOS that are there by design and whose presence is harder to explain. And also you have to admit that people say that, oh, well, EOS started off way better than like Ethereum because they have way more transaction capability. They have this, that, and the other thing. Well, they're a totally different thing. They're centralized. They're a delegated proof of stake with 21 people making $2.5 million a year to process your transactions. So this is barely a crypto at all. This completely defeats the entire idea of decentralization. So there's a total difference there. Also, when you're the first to do something like Bitcoin and Ethereum and several other coins that came much earlier, of course there's going to be bugs because they were the first one to do it. When you're the first one to do anything, there's going to be some problems, and other people are going to take a look at your project and go, oh, okay, I see how he did that. Now I'm going to improve on that because I saw him make mistakes, and I'm not going to make those same mistakes. So there's differences. And with $4 billion, there should be very little mistakes. You don't see a skyscraper be developed and then it just crumbles into pieces. And no, I'm not talking about 9/11, but you don't just see a skyscraper be developed for $4 billion and then it just crumples over in the wind. No, because there was $4 billion and engineers made sure of it all along the way. Unlike EOS here. So the amount payable ranges according to the amount of network resources the DApp requires. Had CryptoKitties been running on EOS at the height of the DApp's popularity, it's been suggested that the amount of tokens required to operate it would have ran into the millions of dollars. And then there's the complexity. Excuse me, I just can't get my throat clear. And then there's a complexity of creating an EOS wallet, creating an account that calls for obtaining the assistance of an existing account holder. Without their input, it's impossible for any newcomer to join the EOS ecosystem. In time, EOS DApp should make account creation easier, but until then, the public blockchain operates more like a closed system, with participants reliant on the support of other EOS holders to get the ball rolling. So this is their entry for the EOS logo competition. Oh, good job. So EOS oddities have failed to dampen market enthusiasm. So despite all the drama, glitches, and oddities of EOS, the market has remained bullish on Dan Larimer's blockchain. Why? I don't know. I don't think people do their research, to be totally honest. With so many token holders invested in the project, the community is willing EOS to succeed no matter what, and no matter no amount of negativity, or FUD as the acronym goes, will be allowed to prevail. Even when a major bug was discovered in EOS prior to launch, followed by the hasty creation of a bounty program and the discovery of several more bugs, the market shrugged the problems off. So what's this concept called? When a blockchain project makes serious errors in their base consensus protocol, and when it's pointed out or discovered, they can't easily hard fork, so they double down on their previous bad decisions and or paint it over with complexity and excuses. And everybody voted Blockholm syndrome. We had sunk chain fallacy, chain splaining, and blockhead chaining. So EOS, not doing so hot. So 6 fake crypto exchanges were busted by Ukraine's cyber police. So officers from Ukraine's cyber police have exposed an organized group of scammers who created a network of fake online exchanges offering conversion of cryptocurrencies. According to a press release issued by the National Police, a number of sites have been used to deceive and defraud unsuspecting citizens who wanted to trade their cryptos. Moneycraft, all right, Convex, some pictures of whatever. So in the last couple of years, Ukraine has been experiencing a growing interest in cryptocurrencies with a rising trend in crypto trading volume. According to the latest reports, the estimated daily crypto turnover on the 3 major Ukrainian exchanges, Exmo, Kuna, and BTC, reaches a couple of million. So 700 million yearly. The total is likely to be even higher, as at least 18 other trading platforms and more than 4,000 individual traders are believed to provide exchange services both online and offline. So yeah, watch out for them. Watch out for them fake exchanges. So far, Ukrainian police have found at least 6 fake websites: Moneycraft.info, Swapex.net, MyExchanger, Iconvex, LikeChange.biz. Oh man, because that's one that I was going to take with a .biz on the end of it. Most have been taken down already, and one now redirecting this to sites with pornographic content. Okay. Totally makes sense. Investigators believe there are more undiscovered websites and have asked the public to report suspicious platforms to the cybercrime .gov. UA Ukraine, whatever. So yeah, Ukraine. Don't go to fake exchanges. Go to the ones that everybody else goes to, the real ones. So another thing on Satoshi Nakamoto, I just want to read this right here, was kind of interesting. So it's basically saying that, Satoshi Nakamoto, known to the CIA, FBI, created by the NSA, the search intensifies. So always an interesting article, on Satoshi. I'm always just a huge fan. Anything written about that. I just have a burning, yearning. Let's see, what's another word that rhymes? Hey, by the bay, whatever. According to my source, Mr. Muse explained the NSA was able to use their writer invariant method of stylometry to compare Satoshi's known writings with trillions of writing samples from people across the globe. So by taking Satoshi's text and finding the 50 most common words, the NSA was able to break down his text to 5,000 word chunks and analyze each to find the frequency of those 50 words, and this would result in a unique 50 number identifier for each chunk. And then the NSA placed each of these numbers into a 50-dimensional space and flattened them into a plane using principal components analysis. The result is a fingerprint for anything written by Satoshi that could be easily compared to any other writing. So do they know who he is? Actually, I suspect they actually probably do, because the NSA is able to just tap into the fiber optics of the internet, and basically they just suck up all of the internet like a vacuum, and then they're able to use databases to search whatever they want. So it wouldn't be surprising. Also, the government has, or at least the U.S. government, I'm sure many other governments do, have black budget programs upwards of $2.5 trillion. Again, I said this in earlier videos, that you can just look up videos where, NSA members and CIA members are being grilled by senators saying, hey, where did this $2.5 trillion go missing? And they said, we don't know. We don't know where a dime of it went. What do you mean you don't know where $2.5 trillion went? That's called a blatant lie to your face. Of course they know. It's hard to lose $2.5 trillion. So his true identity is of utmost importance to the U.S. government, precisely because, especially as the price began to rise, so many people were relying on it. The problem before even the tech could be evaluated on its own merit was a principal DHS worry, a foreign creator. If Bitcoin can do it all it claims for itself, disrupting financial markets, a country hostile to the U.S. could quickly start the ball rolling, and worse. Why go to so much trouble to identify Satoshi, he asked rhetorically. My source tells me that the Obama administration was concerned that Satoshi was an agent of Russia or China, that Bitcoin might be weaponized against us in the future. Knowing the source would help the administration understand their motives. As far as I can tell, Satoshi hasn't violated any laws, and I have no idea if the NSA determined he was an agent of Russia or China or just a Japanese crypto hacker. So Mr. Muse was ultimately unable to get just who Satoshi is, of course. Instead, he was left with the conclusion DHS know, and that the Bitcoin's first billionaire was probably a collection of folks. For his efforts, he was personally contacted by the Department of Homeland Security and asked to submit to an interview. He did, noting that he was unable to publish just what he discussed with DHS, but he could say their contacting him was due to his Satoshi's Medium posts. I've had to stop taking phone calls or accepting voicemail messages, Mr. Muse concludes. My email is almost unusable with more than 10,000 unread messages at last count. The only way to contact me now is via text, and it is likely that I'm going to have to change my number fairly soon. I don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto really is, but I believe the NSA does. So I think sooner or later this is going to get out. How? I'm not really sure, but sooner or later it'll be leaked, and we'll get to find out who Satoshi Nakamoto is. Is it best if Satoshi Nakamoto is anonymous? Maybe. But I'm certainly not going to be the one personally to break it, so I'm sure somebody else is, and I'm curious as to who it is and how it was made and why it was made. So if we find out who Satoshi is, we find out, again, as it said in the article, a lot of motives behind it. Was it somebody from Russia? Was it somebody from China? Was it a group of people? Was it just a Chinese or a Japanese cypherpunk that made it? It's really, really weird. Hal Finney passed away from ALS. He was the first one to receive the very first Bitcoin. So obviously he was in cahoots with Satoshi, or the group known as Satoshi. And that, obviously they had to be in touch with each other for him to download and get a hold and set up a Bitcoin core wallet. And we're talking a very early core wallet to receive the very first Bitcoin. And then, there's well over a million Bitcoin in some of the original wallets, and they've never been moved. So that either, tells me that somebody doesn't want to move them to keep their anonymity, or it was really Hal Finney that actually mined to those wallets, whether he was the creator or not. Maybe he mined to those wallets. He was shown how to mine, and then he passed away, and obviously he can't get to the wallets anymore, or nobody can, because his private keys are lost somewhere. So the most commented on article during the week covered the claims by Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse that Bitcoin has no hope of being a world currency and is controlled by China. And I know that seems a little outrageous at first, but a number of prominent people, he said, even Steve Wozniak has said that he sees a world where Bitcoin is the primary currency. I think that's absurd. I don't think that any major economy will allow that to happen, and neither do I. By the way, it doesn't make sense, again, because Bitcoin has like 7 transactions per second, and even if you doubled, tripled, or quadrupled that, even if you made that go 100-fold, 700 transactions is still just not enough. It just isn't. And so Garlinghouse added, I'll tell you another story that is underreported but worth paying attention to. Bitcoin is really controlled by China. And it is. He's not really kidding. There are 4 miners in China that control over 50% of Bitcoin, of the Bitcoin hash rate. So how do we know that China won't intervene? How many countries want to use a Chinese-controlled currency? It's just not going to happen. So of course, Garlinghouse or whoever he is, Garlinghouse, excuse me, Brad Garlinghouse, the creator of Ripple, the Ripple CEO anyway. Of course, he's going to FUD a little bit on Bitcoin and stuff, and who wants to use a Chinese-controlled currency because he wants everybody to use Ripple. That makes sense. But what he's saying really isn't untrue. So has he given an impartial analysis? Add your say to the discussion. I will. Yeah, I mean, with Bitmain and various other ASIC manufacturers in China, they mine on their own equipment. I mean, that's no secret. They have warehouse after warehouse after warehouse. There's pictures of them. You can just Google them. There's pictures of just 7-8 warehouses in a row, all filled with ASIC miners. And because they control all of the hash rate, they could one day intervene and do 51% attacks on Bitcoin. All of the transactions go through China. They have the ability to shut down all of the mining. And if mining shut down, that would be a big problem for Bitcoin. Huge problem. A big problem for all cryptos. And here's the reason why. Because if Bitcoin gets too much lower, we start looking at 5,000, even 4,000, it starts going lower and lower. The difficulty is still incredibly high because of how many Bitcoins have been created. And so if you don't have a level of price of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is supposed to stay above the level of price that is the cost of difficulty. So if it costs, it depends on where you're at, depending on the electricity cost. But if Bitcoin costs that $5,000 to produce, say from Iceland or something like that, where the cost of electricity is very low and they use geothermal power, and it goes below 5,000, that means these miners are operating a loss. And obviously they'll mine for a little while. They'll probably keep at it for a little while in order to, keep getting their coin and hope that the price goes up. But if it doesn't and it stays down there, these miners are going to have to shut down these huge mining operations all around the globe. It's already happening with Hashflare. Hashflare is not paying people out recently. I'm not sure if they've paid people out yet or not, but for the good past few days, they've not been paying anybody out. They've just been covering their own asses, if you will, and covering their own electricity. And that's the difference. That's the difference. If you have your own ASIC, even if you're paying more electricity, you're getting those coins. But if you sign up with Genesis Mining or Hashflare or something like that, they're not giving you the coins. If the price dips below profit, they just won't give you them. They'll use their own coins and cover themselves, and you just won't get anything. And that's what's going to happen, is that these miners are going to end up having to shut down their operations. And so transactions go through miners. Miners make the transactions in Bitcoin. And if there are no transactions, and the transactions start to slow down because the miners shut down, then the miners are actually making even less money because now there's less fees because less people are using Bitcoin, and we'll see a big problem in Bitcoin. There'll be a huge problem. It'll likely collapse it, at least for a little while. It's definitely not good if the price goes down below what miners see as profit. And we're not talking just regular old Joes with graphics cards anymore. We're talking, people with major mining operations that are key in the transaction rates of Bitcoin. But that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And as usual, I will see you guys next time.